be talking about the motivation of the gifted child. So to begin, the key issue in this subject is that despite being exceptional learners, gifted students, they often lack motivation. So it's very common for these students to either be fully engaged into a topic or task or not at all engaged. So we're going to go through some strategies to use in order to promote and build that motivation within these students. And I want you to note that there are different types of motivation and there are different types of things that cause the lack of motivation in students. And so we have to find that balance and know which strategies to use in order to best cater to each of our students. So motivation is the driving force behind all actions of an individual. So basically motivation is driven by needs. And Henry Murray actually studied this over the course of 30 years, and he came to this theory of motivation, and he believes that behavior is driven by an internal state of disequilibrium or a lack of something that drives the individual to action. So going back to the motivation being driven by needs, Murray says that there are two different categories for needs. There's primary needs and there's secondary needs. Primary needs being water, air, sex, food, shelter, those things you need to survive, and secondary needs, things such as achievement, acceptance, or nurturing. And so these needs, specifically the secondary ones, he says, are in the depth to which they're desired, so how badly someone wants to be nurtured or accepted or achieved. That's what's going to mold this student's personality and their attitude towards motivation. So there's two different types of motivation. There's intrinsic motivation and there's extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is that motivation that comes from within. So students or anyone wants to, they want to feel that personal satisfaction. They're not expecting anything in return when they do something. They are motivated fully by an internal force. They want to challenge themselves. They want to accomplish something. They want to do something just because they enjoy it and it makes them feel good. So an example of this could be a student who he loves math and he loves learning about addition. So he goes home and he practices a bunch of different addition problems because he simply enjoys it, not because he thinks he's going to get a reward from it. It's just simply because he feels personal growth towards it and he's very interested in the topic. Extrinsic motivation is when people do something from an outside force. So they think they're going to earn a reward or they're doing it to avoid something, to avoid getting in trouble. So a student might act right or do their homework for the grade, not because they really want to do it for the learning or for it being right. So they're expecting something in return. It's not coming from within. They want something from the outside. So what we're going to look at mainly is intrinsic motivation because extrinsic motivation can be detrimental to a student's success. So what we're going to mainly focus on today is intrinsic motivation and different strategies and techniques that we as teachers can use to motivate our students in the classroom. The first thing when trying to motivate students is to look at why they're unmotivated. So the first thing you're going to do is check to make sure there's no deeper issue or underlying cause, such as a physical or cognitive issue. So any different type of learning disability that's unknown, you want to make sure that that's not the reason. And if it is the reason, oftentimes those students do have a low self-confidence. And so that's going to fall along with these other categories, which could be a disconnect between school and self. So a student doesn't feel comfortable in their school. They don't feel comfortable with their teacher. There's something that is not clicking between them and their school. And self-concept. So students could have low confidence, and this goes back to the learning disabilities that oftentimes students with those learning disabilities will feel self-confident, will have low self-confidence, but you can also have low self-confidence and not have a learning disability. They just simply do not feel good about their work and their learning that they're doing. And lastly, a reason that students are going to be unmotivated is simply because they just don't have good work habits, they don't have good study skills, they don't know how to stay organized or how to manage their time. And so these are some ways that we can fix that in the classroom. So the first thing to do is to be careful in how you give feedback to your students. So rather than just saying, oh, you did a great job, or this looks good, or this needs work, you need to give specific details of how it needs work. So say, oh, this is correct because you added the 3 and the 4, which made 7, and explain to them what they're doing right or what they're doing wrong, rather than just giving qualitative feedback. Another way is to set goals with your students. So this can be short-term or long-term goals. Something that can often cause students to be unmotivated is that they believe what they're doing has no value. And so by looking at these goals and seeing what their long-term goal is, they may be more motivated to do these activities. If you show them, this goal, we are doing this activity because this is going to help you achieve this, which will help you achieve this, which will eventually help you to achieve your ultimate long-term goal, whether that be going to college or getting a certain job. If they can see each step that they're doing that's going to help them to get to that goal, they will be more motivated. And they also need to be explicitly shown because they may not understand how something little is going to help them long-term. Another way is to really get to know your students, discover their interests. You need to know what they enjoy, what they don't enjoy, and try to link their interests from outside of school to the curriculum that you're doing inside of school. Developing positive values for learning, this kind of goes back up to to setting goals, is just showing them that what we do in school and what we learn is important, and it will help you. We don't do anything just because we do it, because it's important. Another thing to be careful of is isolating gifted students. So a lot of times, we may think, let's just put the gifted kids over here and they'll do this activity because they're smarter. We'll give them this while I focus on the other kids, but that is very hindering to them. And they need to be looked at just as every other student needs to be, and they need to be challenged, and they need to be given activities that are appropriate to them. And they need to be able to work with other students so they can bounce off ideas and express themselves in various ways rather than just always being in that gifted student section. Another thing, they need to know study skills. So this stuff can be taught. And, ways that you can do so is by setting up, an organization system with them, giving them or helping them to label their binders, label their homework, label or start an agenda, create to-do lists, have tasks for them to do that they can check off. This also entails showing them how to create effective notes rather than, writing down everything the teacher's saying. Do bullets, or how to create an outline. Just really going through each step with them. And this stuff is not going to happen overnight. It's something that they need to be guided on and taught over the course of a time. And once it becomes a habit, they will begin to better be able to manage their studies. Another thing you want to encourage in your classroom is risk-taking. So make it a safe place where students can they can try things and not be scared of failure, because they'll know that, in the attempt, they're still learning. And that entails challenging them. So you don't want to give them work that's too easy for them because they will get bored, and you don't want to give them work that's way too hard for them because they're going to get frustrated. So it is a good idea to give them curriculum that's about one level above where they're at in order to challenge them. So you want to be able to create this classroom flow, which is when your students are so actively engaged that they are not thinking about anything else in the moment. All they're thinking about is that certain task that they're on. So this just creates a well-rounded room of students that are motivated and ready to learn. And so in conclusion, it's important to note that you can instill this intrinsic motivation in your students. And this is done first by knowing your students, getting to the root of the problem, knowing what's causing them to be unmotivated, and knowing ways in which you can help to motivate them. And once you know them, you're able to help them set their goals. You're able to help put them into better groups in the classroom and support them in their learning journey through all their ups and downs, and challenge them to be better students and to be more intrinsically motivated. And I used a reference from a psych journal called All Psych, and this is where I found information on Henry Murray and his theory of motivation. I used our textbook, Understanding the Social and Emotional Lives of Gifted Students. I used an article I found that compares intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. I also used the Encyclopedia of Giftedness, Creativity, and Talent. And I used another article I found over strategies that help to motivate the ungifted child. Thank you.